Welcome to episode 43, Planes of Existence. So, we'll be talking about 3D, we'll be talking about 5D, and you may wonder,
what's the D? Oh.
We tickle ourselves sometimes.
So if this sounds familiar to you, or if you're a newbie at this like me, we invite you to come along on our journey as we talk about these planes of existence.
Stay tuned. Welcome to the Witchy Wit podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm Kimberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in everybody and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
races,
and backgrounds.
With a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true, our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves.
Welcome to episode 43, Planes of Existence. So, before we talk about that, which we have plenty to talk about, let's see what's been going on in our world. Would you care to start?
I would love to. Okay. So, I wanted to check in today with something that happened to me that was really interesting. Mm-hmm. In the span of 24 hours, I had 2 run-ins with people listening to the podcast that I didn't know about.
That you didn't know they listened to the podcast?
I did not know they listened. Uh-huh. I did not know they listened. And while that in itself is not, unusual, mm-hmm. like there's been a number of times where I'm like, what? Like, I didn't realize, but I just want to tell a short story about the second time that it happened. So I have the house next door to me is a rental, and a new person moved into the rental house. And so I went over and introduced myself, and, just to it said I want you to know who I am, I live here. If you ever need anything, come on over. And then I gave him my phone number and said I really like having phone numbers of neighbors just so we can keep each other, in
That's
the loop,
so
especially
smart.
Because of Snowvid and things like that. We can always help each other out. So I gave him my number and he was like, thank you so much. And then he gave me a piece of paper back with his number on it. Which I think, by the way, is slightly dated. He could have just texted me back to that number, and then I would have had his number. But I appreciate it.
Yes.
He is a bit of an older gentleman.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
But I appreciated the sentiment, so he gave it back with his first and last name and the phone number. So I texted him, and said, this is Leilani and all that stuff. So nothing out of the ordinary. Mm-hmm. Then later that night, I got on Facebook, and I noticed that a new person had liked our Facebook page, the Witchy Wit Facebook page. Mm-hmm. And I looked and it was him.
Ah, how funny!
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, which is fine, right?
Right.
But I was just like, how in tarnations did that happen? Yeah. Because the chances of him being witchy are slim to none. But I don't know what happened. He put his number in his phone, and then I have no idea. Somehow it got it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm out of the broom closet to him now by proximity, I guess. So.
Oh my gosh! Wow. Yeah. Well, after a certain point, what can we do? We're just slaves to our fame,
right?
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was just really interesting. I don't know what
the connections were,
how it happened, but but. I had a sense of I didn't out myself to him, and now he knows. Am I okay with this?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. But also, I felt a bit out of control. Ultimately, yes. I am okay with it, but there was a part of me that felt a bit vulnerable. That now he knows. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the other one was somebody that I do not know anymore, but at one point in time I knew. She reached out to me because we had popped up on her TikTok feed.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool.
So cool. I'm sure somehow because my phone number's in her phone,
Right.
But I was just like, in 24 hours, holy moly.
Yeah, wow. Impact.
Yeah.
Impact.
Yeah.
Even in ways that we can never imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there will be other ways that we will never have imagined as well. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Definitely an opportunity for me to surrender to people knowing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's my check-in.
Yeah.
What about you? What's going on with you?
Well, you know part of the story, but so about 3 weeks ago, my air conditioning died, or my air conditioning stopped. Long story, electricians, changing circuit breakers, the whole bit. Anyway, I had to get a new air conditioner. And I thought about how I was kind of telling everyone about, oh my God, I've got to get a new air conditioner. It's going to be thousands and thousands of dollars and blah, 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 blah. And I just thought how negative that sounded. And here I am trying to, be much more positive and reframe. We'll talk a little bit about that today. Just kind of reframe situations so that I can see the blessing in it. And I realized I was totally falling down on the job there. So I thought about this, like if I were getting it would be super expensive dress or shoes or something super, super expensive and kind of nervous about the money, but I wouldn't be saying, oh my gosh, I gotta get these new, no, I would be, I'm getting these new shoes and blah, blah, blah. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be in a wedding and I'm going to get these wonderful shoes to wear or whatever. And so I've been trying now when I'm telling people about it, as opposed to saying, oh, got to get a new air conditioning, I'm getting a new air conditioner. So I've been trying to do this with that same level of excitement. First of all, to honor the air conditioner, because, I'm hoping it's going to take care of me for decades.
Down here.
Yeah, exactly. And it's right outside our window. So,
hey, air conditioner,
doing well. Yeah. Hanging tough, dude. And for my own self to give myself that control over how I'm experiencing it. So I got a new air conditioner. Yay! Feel the cool air.
I can.
Yes. So. Mm-hmm.
And to vouch for you, first of all, you talked a little bit more about this over on our Patreon page.
Oh, okay.
So if y'all are interested in more about this process, which is incredibly interesting to listen to your evolution with it, you talked about it there. And I can also vouch that we were at a party yesterday, like a little get together, and someone asked, and you said it in that tone.
Did I? Okay, I could.
You said, I just got a new air conditioner.
Well, good.
And you clapped your hands.
Yes,
and you raised your shoulders, and I was just sitting there like, oh, good job.
Trying. Yep. We can only do what we can do, but that was a step in the right direction. Yay!
That was awesome.
Which is going to lead us right into our talk today. Planes of existence.
I feel like I want to say it dramatically.
Planes of existence. Oh, I like the echo. Very nice.
Thank you. We work together.
Yeah, exactly. So, a little bit of a caveat. This is going to be heavy, Kimberlyn, because, why exactly?
Because I am along for the ride. Because
I had this idea.
Yes.
And you were totally down with it.
I'm totally down. I could probably, I think about planes of existence. Not like you do. Apparently.
So, can I give a little background?
Yes.
So this, normally we kind of, the two of us kind of contribute to a little bit of an outline, and sometimes we do it, sometimes we go off on tangents or whatever. But, things that we want to get to, we want to make sure we address in the podcast, and we both kind of contribute to it. And then after a certain time, I say, "Okay, stop editing. I've got to print it out." And this one I did by myself, but I wanted to give you a sense of it. So I made a word cloud, and I sent that to you last night. And I said, "Now, if you really want to go linear and actually see the outline, it's posted on our Google Drive and the whole bit." And would you care to share your response?
Yeah, I went linear, and I looked at that document on our Google Drive, and dang.
Well, and to be fair, we probably won't get to a lot of this, but I was just jotting down, things that I think are important to me, or at least these are the elements that I find are really important as I think about this and as I experience it. So
I would like to just start by saying, so for me, planes of existence are really important. I do. So I'm entering this conversation with a belief that there is more going on than what we see.
Right.
You know, so I am coming in believing and sensing and knowing that is true. I also am coming into it as a witch, where we constantly talk about standing between the worlds. Like those are the phrases that our circle uses, and the belief that what happens between the worlds changes all the worlds. And so even in that little phrase that we say there, I think that really encapsulates the fact that there is more going on, and there's more that we see, and that as a witch, I believe that I do travel between these planes.
Yeah. So, and I want to, you know, we're going. I wrote this down. We're kind of taking a deep dive into my experience of this, but it's not. This is not. I mean, my experience, of course, is going to be unique, but this is not new material. I mean, what we understand from about what many people understand about planes of existence comes from mythological sources. I mean, this is not new. And so, or shamanic traditions. So one of the expressions are the that you see in pop culture are the different worlds, like in Thor, you know, the Niflheim and the Disheim and the all of these different worlds. And so we see expressions of it. And then there's in a number of different traditions, we have the world tree, and you know, there's different planes that represents. And in Christian denominations, we have heaven and hell, right? So we have earth, which is one plane. We have heaven, which is another, and hell, which might just be kind of diametrically dual opposition of the same plane of eternity. I don't know, but you know, but it's not new. And what I'm going to talk about is not new either. And it represents maybe a deeply felt and deeply worked out, not just by me, but by a bunch of other people, way of approaching and thinking about these planes that might seem definitely woo, and maybe woo, right, depending on people. So I'm just going to ask that you kind of, you know, like be like Leilani.
Okay.
If you can. I know it's hard because, you know, she's fabulous,
right?
But it's something to aspire to. But be like Leilani, and just kind of, you know, think, like, even if it sounds pretty far out, just kind of ask yourself as we go through this, kind of like a thought experiment, like, oh, what if what she says is really true? Well, what does that mean for me? Like, what does that say, or what does that inform how I think or how I do things? So I'm just going to ask you to just approach today's episode with an open mind and an open heart.
That's how I'm approaching it.
Okay.
Because I do feel like I said, we journey between the worlds. But I've never actually thought about what does that mean, but I haven't really thought about what does that mean about dimensions.
Yeah. So I'm going to start out by talking about some of the ways that we commonly think about planes of existence. Often you'll hear someone talk about physical versus astral. And I think that's probably how a lot of people think of, I mean, without the religious connotations, like heaven and hell and the physical world. So the physical world is the world of your conscious living. So supposedly logical, rational, there's a cause and effect. If someone drops a rock, you expect to hear the sound of the rock hitting the ground. Or if it's a big enough rock, you expect to feel some vibration, right? So that's the physical world. Versus the astral world, which often people equate. And again, when I start talking about these terms, everyone interprets them their own unique way, right? So I'm just going to kind of give you kind of an amalgamation of what I understand a lot of people to think, okay? So take it with a salt shaker. As opposed to the astral plane, which is more the subconscious. So the conscious is, you know, your five senses, touching, thinking, etc., etc. The subconscious is more ephemeral, more fantastical. You know, it's associated with dreams, or people experience it in near-death experiences. So it has that kind of association. And then some people believe that they astrally project. That means that they actually move in this plane from where their physical body is to another place, that their physical body is not present. So those are kind of the common ones. And Leilani is nodding and saying, okay, so you're with me there.
I'm with you so far.
Okay, good.
I'm all about this.
Okay. So, just interrupt me if you have any questions, right?
Will do.
So where I tend to do a lot of my work is in the spectrum of dimensions. So when we started episode 43, Planes of Existence, I also had like a slash and dimensions, but we didn't say that because. Sorry, that's my dog. He's rolling over and taking a big yawn.
He's astral projecting right now.
They do. Well, have you ever seen dogs chase rabbits?
In their dreams?
Yeah.
Yes.
So but they're physically moving, but it's their brain. So there we go. So we see that we're kind of bridging that. So we'll talk a little bit about the bridge in a second. But is this physical and these stages, and so we have had developmentally as human beings, and on this world there are stages, but also emotionally, spiritually, mentally, there's these stages. Spiritually, I said spiritually, didn't I? Okay. Spiritually, there's these stages as well, and those are the ones that I have been playing the most with, and that's kind of been my work, my playground, my liminal space where I explore stuff about myself on this plane, and then emotionally and mentally and spiritually. Would you like to hear about them?
I would. So I'm officially outside of my I'm outside of my previous knowledge.
Okay, so but you were with me up until this point.
Yes.
Okay, so have you heard the terms 3D and 5D?
No. 3D as like at the movie theater.
The 3D. Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Okay, with the glasses. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 3D is the easiest way to think about that would be to think about our physical world. Okay. So right now, most of the world is operating in 3D. Now, as I say this, because there's numbers and 5 is higher than 3, because I'll talk about 3D and 5D, people will say, okay, well, 5 is better, and 5 is something that we aspire to, and so because of that, it's a developmental thing, but neither one of them is better, quote unquote, better than the other. They just are. And people operate in them, and people go back and forth between them, depending on their life, their position in their lives, but also just emotionally, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that 3D and 5D. Okay,
I'm excited.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
yes.
So So 3D is a consciousness is viewing things from a purely physical state. So just like we were talking about the physical and the astral. So focus on matter, on material, on the density of being human. So, and I'll talk about density in a bit, because I think that's going to be helpful in terms of thinking about dimensions. And one of the main aspects of 3D is that we are individuals separate from others. So you are Leilani. You are not Kimberlyn. You are not your neighbor next door. You are not our circle. Okay, so it's just you. Okay, so that's the physical or 3D dimension, or the third dimension. Okay, so when we were talking about the glasses and the so there's the dimensions of height, width, and then that depth, right? Okay, so but this is the third dimension, almost along the same lines, and I'll come back to that hopefully to kind of tie that all together. And so, but the thinking about that is that there's because it's physical, like there's money, there's gold, there's possessions, and they exist, and because they exist, when like Leilani only exists in one place at one period of time, if I go outside this room, there's no more Leilani with me, right? And so the same thing with money, with possessions, that there's only a certain amount of them, and because of that, if you need or want them, if you take it, you take it from someone else. Or not necessarily take it from someone else, but if you have it, then they can't have it.
So I felt a little bit sad whenever you said there's no more Leilani with me. I actually felt like I felt it right here.
Oh,
and I was
so
like,
sorry.
No.
There's always, but see, because I sometimes operate in 5D, I know Leilani's always with me. And I feel Leilani.
So that's interesting. So just to kind of like, so I'm new. So any of our listeners who are new, this is all new for them. We are together on this journey together. So it sounds like the 3 dimensionals is real. Like it's like an acknowledgement of the reality that we're in, but it might be kind of not all encompassing. Like it might kind of be a bit short-sighted, or because the concept of like, I know that I'm with people even whenever I'm not with people, and I do feel a sense of connection, and there has been moments of knowing where I'm like, something is going on with this person, you know, and
right.
And so like those moments of interconnection, and then. But I also know that there are moments whenever I do feel like you mentioned, like if you take something from me, that it's gone, right? Of like a feeling of scarcity or lack, or even just like that the thing is the thing, and the thing is itself is there's only one of it, or
right?
Whatever.
Exactly.
So I definitely have. I don't want to say that it sounds like this is like a horrible place, or a reductive place, or like a whatever, but I definitely have felt the sense of being in that.
Yeah. So a word that you said that kept resonating for me, even though I was deeply listening to what you were saying while that was resonating, was reality. Because when you're operating in 3D, you accept as your reality that sense of separateness and that sense of material. When you're in 5D, and we'll talk about that, you accept as your reality the interconnectedness. So that's why I'm saying we go back and forth. We make decisions. Every moment you're deciding to respond to something in a way that is more associated with the 3rd dimension, or 3D, or 5D. Okay, or higher. There's other planes. We're not even going to get to those. Cause yeah, so we're just sticking with 3 and 5. Okay.
Okay.
So, So for example, like I know, whether we're doing ritual or whatever, I know Leilani's always with me. Okay. However, if you were in a car accident, there would be fear that I am going to lose Leilani, even though on a certain level, I know that you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, and that's why when people say, well, I'm 5D, so I'm better than 3D. No, if we're agreeing to be on this planet at any point in time, you're agreeing to be in 3D, for at least part of it, right? And so it's just a choice that you're making. It's not good, it's not bad. But recognizing that because of that choice, there's certain things that are going to be a part of that reality. Okay?
It does make sense, yes.
Okay.
And so would you say that there's a sense of developing and practicing, like training my thoughts? Because I again, this is all new to me, and I'm sensing that there's a lot of money to be made with fear and lack.
Girl.
Right?
Girl.
And
yes.
so I'm sensing that a lot of like consumer culture and beauty culture and a lot of other things can really get a lot out of pushing some narratives that would better fit the 3D, right?
Yes.
So do you feel like there's a way, or that it is like a practicing, and I'm imagining that like anything that we practice, we maybe fall back into,
for sure,
or are pushed back into by life events. Like you mentioned, like the car accident, and then there's the fear, and then maybe like lifting ourselves out of the fear and reminding us of what we know to be true. Like, do you think that that's
right? Well, so here's the thing: the reason why we agree to be in 3D is that there's a great deal of joy in smelling a rose. Or
dancing,
being in your body, which is being in our body, which is our next episode.
Yeah, which I have a lot to say about.
Which will be a nice contrast, I think, to what we're discussing today.
This
right?
is very air.
Yes, yes, dimension. Yeah,
yes,
very air.
This is very air.
Yeah. So there's a lot of joy in being in 3D, and that's why we choose. We make in Kimberlyn's opinion, we make these conscious decisions to experience the joy of matter, to experience the joy of touching someone who is separate from you. So your skin is touching their skin, and that's a different experience than you just being in me, right? So we make those decisions, and they're beautiful decisions, right? The challenge is to not accept that that's all there is. And that's a part of the challenge of being in 3D. There's challenges in all of the different dimensions. But for 3D, it's that.
I love that. And so this is resonating with what you said before, which is that neither of them or none of these are better than the other. They're just different. And so I like that, because I'm thinking about the joy and the pleasure and the sacredness of eating a pomegranate. Or hugging a loved one.
Exactly. Or eating 75 Fredericksburg's peaches because I brought them back and my house was hot and they started to ripen all at the same time.
Is that a current problem?
It's a current problem. Yeah.
I can help you with that. Okay,
problem. Good. You're gonna help me with that before you leave. So.
Oh yes, 3D problem solved.
The challenge is going to result in great joy.
I'm rubbing my belly and I'm salivating, thinking about the 3D of eating that peach.
There we go. Exactly. So there's a great deal of joy and that physical contact is something to be celebrated. Being in your body and doing the things like dancing and eating and drinking and talking with people and laughing and letting your toes go in the cool stream, all of those are to be celebrated and to be enjoyed. Okay. And then we have 5D.
All right.
Okay, so wait, so 3D tends to be about scarcity, to be focused on material, and by focusing on the material, recognizing that the material isn't always with you all the time. And so because of that, it often engenders emotions of scarcity, survival of the fittest, like I've got to get mine to make sure that I and my family are happy and well taken care of, right? So that's part of that mental energy. Also, 3D relies a great deal on the 5 senses to get information. So you see it, you read it, you hear it, you take whatever that tells you where you are and who you are and what you are and what you're experiencing at that time. Yep. Okay. Oh, and this is an important one because this is because of the the focus on the physical and on the materiality. We tend to see cause and result as being totally physical. So our thoughts have very little import in that. So by that I mean, if I don't have enough money, that's because I didn't work hard enough, or my boss is stingy, or something, or someone beat me up and took my money, right? And so it's very much on cause and effect, material cause and effect. And so your thoughts, your mental state, your emotions have very little to do with that. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so moving to 5D, the focus tends to be on our experience and how we're experiencing that. Okay, and so the way I tend to think about it is the focus tends to be on the frequencies of my vibration. So by that I mean everything is energy. Okay, we're okay. Everything is energy. It's just that some energy moves super fast and some moves slow. So a rock has very slow energy, and that's why it's holdable. You can carry it, you can pick it up, you can put it down, you can drop it. It'll hit the ground because it has very dense, slow moving energy. Our bodies are faster moving energy. That it makes us mobile, right? But also we slough skin and we grow more. So there's a great deal of change because our energy moves faster. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our thoughts move the fastest. And that's how we can make these connections mentally based on, obviously on our information, but like our minds are almost like computers, right? And the thoughts themselves can't be touched. you can't pick up a thought, you can't drop it, you can't feel it or whatever, but we tend to all agree that we have them, right? I mean, wouldn't you say that the majority of people say that
yes.
they have? Right. But see, and this is again a recognition of these planes that people may not know that they're acknowledging, but already exist in our world. So we have that going on, those thoughts, and they're just another form of energy. So when we're in 5D, we recognize that, I don't want to use the word control, but negotiating those levels of vibration create our reality. Okay, so our reality exists of those frequencies of vibration, as opposed to our reality being material and what were my other words? Matter and things like that, and density. Does that make sense?
So are you saying that our thoughts, because of their vibration, they impact the world around us?
Yes.
Or the world, not even the world around us, just the world.
They co-create. Yeah, they co-create.
Co-create.
They co-create. So all of our thoughts are co-creating, say, a political anxiety, or all of our thoughts are co-creating, I don't know if you feel this at all, but I'm trying to think of a kind of a mundane, not a mundane, but a common. So at Christmas time, people tend to, when they're not shopping at the last minute at the mall, but they tend to be more compassionate, more, at least performing love, whether or not they're feeling it, but performing love and being nicer to each other. And that's because often in Christian societies, that idea of all of the experience of Christmas permeates our thoughts. And so we're kind of creating this atmosphere of, Merry Christmas to you, or Happy Holidays, or, I keep Christmas in my heart, that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? Okay. So there are times when or for me, I felt it a great deal after 9/11, that people were really pulling together, and our energy was towards surviving, not just surviving, but sending energy to these people who are doing all of this work in New York. Does that make sense? So there are periods where where people who don't normally do a lot of work in 5D can feel some of the reality of 5D. And I would hazard that witches spend a lot of time, depending on their practice, etc., spend a lot of time playing with 5D.
It sounds like it to me. As you're saying it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is like what we do in Circle, like when we raise and direct energy. Just the idea of like the fact that we can raise and direct energy that will impact and change our worlds is this. Right. And so just as in 3D, we tend to rely on our 5 senses. In 5D, the numbers don't, like, why are they using these numbers? But in 5D, we rely on 6 senses. So the 5 and intuition, and usually allowing intuition to reframe or frame, not reframe, but frame the information that we're getting from our other senses. So an example of that might be, if I were functioning from a highly material world, that means my past, the information that I've gotten, say, about my past, will heavily affect my future. So by that I mean, let's say a guy with a red hat and a beard attacked me once when I was younger. If I see a guy with a red hat and a beard coming towards me really, really fast, regardless of what the situation is, that's going to kind of color what I do. Okay. And I may try to talk myself out of it or whatever, but that's, if I see someone who looks just like this other guy coming at me, that's going to be a part of my decision-making process. Right. And so similarly in 5D, if that same situation occurred, because intuition kind of frames everything, that even though this guy is coming, my reaction may be different than it would be if I was just existing in a material world. Does that make sense? How might it be different? Could you play out that scenario?
Yeah. So one way I would would do that. That might happen is I might take that as an opportunity to forgive the guy for what he did in the past. So seeing that might just remind me of that and say, oh, I haven't released some of that. And as he walks by me, I'll be doing some work doing like that, or just saying, wow, I haven't overcome that. Let me just sit for a moment and focus on that. Okay. Now, hopefully the guy wasn't running at me to attack me, but even so, the emotional response, my response to it will be different. Does that help?
It does. So it sounds like there's more of a consciousness around understanding the impact that our thoughts can have.
Yeah.
And an awareness.
Yeah. And I would say, we use the word understanding. I would posit that it's even less about understanding and more inner knowing. And so it wouldn't even be like I made it a kind of a 3D response, like, oh, I need to work through that. Probably if I were fully operating in 5D, which I don't as a rule do, but I'm a work in progress. The guy coming towards me would not engender that response at all. I would just feel love and compassion for another human being who ostensibly is separate from me, but I know is actually really a part of me, that we're connected on some sort of way.
That makes sense.
And I may take that as an opportunity to forgive that guy for my past, if I hadn't already done that. But it wouldn't be, oh, I must think about this, I must process, I must journal. It would just be, oh, hey, I forgive you. If even that, it might just be so, because our thoughts are so fast, right? It might be so fast that I address, clear, and release it like almost unconsciously, because I allow my intuition to take care of it. Yeah,
I get that.
Yeah, you good.
It's like a duck on like swimming. Like your brain is like down there with like the duck's feet so fast that the duck of your brain might not even realize that your duck feet did that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And what's amazing for me when I'm operating from 5D in 5D is that in 3D, my brain is kind of controls everything to the extent that I sometimes I'm not even in my body. I'm just stuck there. But when I'm really operating from 5D, the brain is just one more tool. And so it might send some stuff in intuitions like, okay, thanks, that was interesting, but keep thinking over there. You're doing a great job. And please stop me if I've said this. Well, actually, I wouldn't have said it on the podcast, but my image of this is in 5D. 5D is like a mom watching her kids playing. When it's like, okay, you're going to be the doctor, and I'm going to be the patient. And that's not what doctors do. Doctors do. You have to pull out your stethoscope and all that. And the mother's like, oh, aren't they sweet? Aren't they cute? And so when I'm really operating in 5D, all of that stuff that was so important to me, I've got to make. Oh, okay, wait. Okay, I've got to run to the bank and I've got to deposit that check. And oh my gosh, I've got to pay this bill. That kind of stuff. It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Nice choices, et cetera, et cetera. It's I recognize that's just a part of this physical plane that may need to be addressed, right? But it doesn't create the anxiety. There's almost an emotional distance from the action, just the way it would be if we were playing a game.
I love that image of like a mother lovingly watching some children playing because there is like a loving detachment, and a sensing of like all of their little bits of reality are true, but a sense of seeing more. Right. And so that's why I say 3D is fun. It's playing a game. It can be playing a game if you recognize that. And if you're recognizing that, you're in 5D, but right? Because we're making, in my opinion, in my thought world, we make choices to appear where we are. So I'm choosing to be in San Antonio in the summer with a broken air conditioner because I needed to detox or something, or I need to do some work. Because I wanted the opportunity to grow a little bit by reframing all of that as in I get to have a new air conditioner, right? So it's a game. It's a game. It's maybe it's more involved than the children playing. Maybe it's like Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. But you know what I'm saying? But it's still
I hesitate to use that because people who are suffering don't want to hear that this is game, and I don't mean to imply that this should be negated or whatever, but these are some choices, at least in my thought world.
So with that in mind, do you sense that as witches, we, at least in our circle, we value moving into 3D and out of 3D and into 5D and out of 3D? I'm thinking about when we tap into our body senses, or whenever we've done rituals that involve dropping honey onto our fingers, right?
Right.
You know, or one ritual where we there was an opportunity to snuggle up in a warm, fluffy blanket, or we've run scarves across our bodies. Like, do you? And then of course we do other work where we are gathering energy and directing it towards a certain end, right, that maybe has a global or universal impact.
Right. So what was your question?
Do you feel like as a witch we are tapping into...
Oh, totally, for sure, yeah.
And moving between these 3D and 5D worlds?
Yeah, 110%.
110%?
Yeah.
Wow!
Because, I mean, I think that's one of the beauties of the work that we do, is whether we... Those are the terms that's terminology that Kimberlyn is using, right? And it works for me. But we're doing kind of that same thing regardless of how we're labeling it. Okay, and so one of the beauties of the work that we do, at least in our circle, speaking only for our circle, is that we're recognizing the liminality of it, that it's not we live here or we live there. You know, it's like going back and forth and playing with that and finding the joys on either side and doing work on either side and recognizing that the work we do in 3D impacts what happens in 5D and vice versa. Yeah.
Okay. And as a body person, as somebody who I feel like I get a lot of my power and energy through my body, through touching and feeling and moving, is it possible that I can gather energy using my body?
For sure.
But then direct it through a more 5D.
So here's the thing. When I use 3D, 5D, I'm talking about worlds, and so I think sorry, I laid back realizing I moved away from the mic. Sorry.
Well, I liked it. You reminded me of like a professor with like the elbow,
the patches,
the elbow patches, who like sat down and kicked their feet up on like a.
I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah, and with like a little pipe, you know, like, I'm so glad you asked that question. Puff puff.
Wow, okay.
That's the energy I saw whenever you went back like that and kind of leaned and folded your arms.
Yeah, let's expound on that. But, so there are these worlds, right? But the beauty of what we do and the beauty of who we are is that it's all energy, right? So 3D energy tends to be denser. 5D energy tends to be lighter. And so we play with density. Density, energy, whatever you want to call it. You can call it energy, magic. It's all this in Kimberlyn's thought world. It's all the same thing. So when you're playing with a heavier, denser energy, then you're doing more body stuff because you want whatever reason. But I'm going to suggest that you want that sense of touch that you can only get when you touch something that's outside of yourself, right? And to be able to experience that, you've got to go to where you're slightly separate from everything else. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. And then sometimes you want to feel that interconnectedness. You want to know that, you might call them angels, you might call them starseeds or aliens or whatever, or Atlanteans or Pleiadians or whatever. You want to feel that connection with all of this, all of the all. Or God, some people call it God. And that's when you're dropping a lot of the density because you've got to lighten up to be able to experience that. And you might hold on to that feeling of sensation. So it's kind of like, you have the balloon, so you might still, allow yourself to feel that while you're doing something that's super, super focused on the body, right? But it's just playing with that energy. It's not either or. You're not 3D or 5D. You're just recognizing that those are just dimensions that you can just go in and out of with a thought, literally with a thought.
I like the idea of them not being like 3D and 5D being like two separate houses, and I like walk in and out of the house, you know?
Yeah. But
instead it being like an overlap.
Right.
I could be in both or either or neither.
Yeah, so here's the thing. When we say 3D and 5D, we're just describing the energy. And so it's not like... So for example, one of the things you might have noticed that I didn't mention is 4D.
I did notice that.
Well, and that's because as you think about these worlds that are primarily this and primarily that, 4D is kind of that bridge. 4D is basically, which is where I think we spend a lot of time, where sometimes we're on the 3D end or going into 3D or whatever, but it's a way of thinking about bridging those two. But again, we're not physically on a bridge. So it's not a matter of, okay, I'm closer to 5D this morning, or I'm closer. It's just all energy. And so 5D is a way of thinking about it as kind of a portal or a hallway or a doorway or whatever. But it's just basically what you're doing with your energy at that time. Okay? And so we use that term, and I think that that's kind of mislabeling, and it's a way for people to kind of grasp it without actually really grasping it. But what works for me is to recognize that 3D it's a state of mind, yes. But it really is, and it's a place where you can be holding, paradoxically, you can be holding both 5D and 3D within you.
I can see how there's a push to try and physicalize it and be like, I'm closer to 5D today, or I'm in the 4D bridge, but I'm like more at 3-ish D. But like what you were saying, so is kind of bouncing around in my brain with this thought of, in quantum physics, the same point can be at two different places at once. But with the reality that I know, like, I am sitting here.
Yes.
I am not at home. Like, I am sitting here next to your air conditioner, right?
Woohoo!
But if I open my mind to the fact that that there is more, then but it's like a challenge because my brain has been taught that I can only be in one place, that something can only be in one place at one time.
I think the best way to think about 3D, 4D, and 5D as developmental stages. Because if you do that, then it makes more sense. But once you've experienced, so in that case, 3D is the material, the physical. 4D is waking up and realizing that there's more than just that, right? And so, you felt that when you were 18 or 19. I wasn't there, but I know that because I'm operating in 5D right now. But you know what I mean? When you sat next to the tree that was growing through the crack, or when you were experiencing nature, and when you were experiencing that you were connecting, at least it sounds that way to me. And so 4D is just a stage that you go through to get to 5D. But once you're in 5D, you can play the world is your oyster.
The worlds
are your the worlds are your oysters. Yeah. So yeah. Once you've experienced 5D, even for a second, it's always there for you, and then you recognize I think the big thing about 5D is you recognize that you play with that stuff, and you may forget. You might, like I said, when my mom died, I forgot, and I felt really alone, and et cetera, feel really separated, et cetera. So, but once you've gotten to that point, it's like, once you've learned something, you can't unlearn it. You might forget it, you might not be able to tap into it as much or whatever, but it's still there. And so once you get into 5D, it's like, it's fun. And I think that's what we do in the work that we do as witches. The work that we do in our circle is that we play around with that.
So can you talk about when we are in ritual and we cast a circle and we say we're between the worlds, is there something that you are thinking about in your brain? Do you use this sort of language in your own processing?
Oh, okay. So I think here's the thing. Whether we use those words or not, if we're doing that work, we're doing that play. Let's not call it work. If we're doing that thing, if we're doing that activity, if we're playing with our energy, we're doing it regardless. But I think so much of our ritual just helps us to quickly start to access all of the stuff that we can do. So by saying we're in sacred space, we're just acknowledging that we've been in sacred space the whole time because our bodies are sacred, right? But that's giving us permission to kind of drop some of the 3D world aside so we can, as a group, start moving together, feeling that interconnectedness, start moving and playing more with 4 and 5D. So when I don't use those words when I do my individual work. I sure as hell use them when we do our work because I feel, sense, intuit that when we start using those, the minute we start using those words, the energy changes, and so it's like a magic wand in Harry Potter. They can, they have wandless magic. They can do magic without the wand. The wand is a focus. It's just a way of getting us to a certain point easier and quicker and more efficiently. And that's what I think the words do. But we could literally just sit in a circle and pick our noses and do the same work.
Yeah. Now that's an interesting idea for a ritual.
Let's do something like that the next time we plan together.
I do like being contrary in my rituals, so...
Yes, you do. I still remember the text elemental invocations.
Yes.
On our phones. Yeah, yes. I do remember that. Yeah. So I mean, we can do that all without any of the words that we use, without invoking a goddess, without doing any of that. Because we're powerful as fuck. We're path. We're path. So, but using those words help us quickly to get there as a group.
So if I or a listener was wanting more about this, where would you direct?
Oh, there's you can Google, 5D or things like that. One of the things that I did a lot of this work. Okay. Well, so there, one psychologist, author, writer, guru to certain people is Dr. David Hawkins, and he's done a lot of. He's done a lot of research and work, and so. If you need the material facts, etc., he's got those. But and so there's a book of his called Power versus Force, and in it he talks about this map of consciousness. And I don't know if we have time to talk about it today, but that's one source. There's tons of places all over the internet. You email me, text me, hit us up on social media. And I can definitely give some other sources, but there's wonderful resources out there just for free for the taking.
Is that the Dr. David Hawkins? Mm-hmm. Is that this thing?
Oh yeah. So okay. Thank you for asking. So one of the things that so this Dr. David Hawkins is a psychologist, but he's done a lot of work with intuition and vibrational and testing. So have you ever muscle tested? Have you ever done muscle testing? Mm-hmm. Okay, so he does a lot of work with muscle testing. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that he has done is it's really just the development of ourselves as human beings, as a race of beings, and there's different vibrational levels of consciousness. So with the highest being your Buddha or Christ consciousness or something like that, and then the lowest being these certain feelings that are associated with a certain vibration. So for example, shame I think is 20. Yeah, 0 to 20 in terms of the vibrational level. So remember how we were talking about vibration and frequency? And so there's certain frequencies that are associated with certain emotions and certain, in some cases, actions, but usually it's reflecting emotions. And the lower the emotion, the higher the emotion, the further along you are developmentally as a human being, and we are as a race, as a species. Okay, and so in fact, I'll try to put a link to this in our show notes. But the idea of consciousness and how we as a human society are growing is reflected in that in the map of consciousness. So as I started to say, 0 to 20 is shame. And he explains this so beautifully. You've got to read the book Power versus Force, meaning that with force, that we're constantly in these lower vibrational activities, and power comes from releasing the need to feel anger, the need to feel guilt, the need to feel these lower vibrational feelings and emotions, and allowing ourselves to just live in a feeling of love, live in a feeling of compassion. Did I answer your question, or can I keep going? Okay. So anyway, just really quickly, 0 to 20 is shame, 20 to 30 is guilt, 30 to 50 is apathy, grief is above that, then fear. All of these are just, if you think about, if you just think about moving through and developing as a human being, these are some of the stages that most people go through.
I find it really interesting that shame is on the very bottom.
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember. So guilt and shame are kind of the same thing. They're blaming someone for something, but usually shame comes from you blaming yourself, and guilt comes from the feeling when someone else blames you for something. And so that the reason it's at the bottom is that when you're living in shame, you can't do anything else. Your body will continue to go to work or whatever, but you're not growing, you're not developing, you can't grow. And so working on kind of releasing those feelings of shame might take you to guilt. Sometimes you can bypass guilt, but often the reason that you're beating up on yourself is somebody beat up on you first, right? And so you kind of have to work through these areas. Some people just were squirted out of the womb at 400, so they're good to go, but a lot of us have had to work through some of those areas. And as a society, don't get me started. That's another episode. But so one of my tasks, I feel, being here, is my job is to help to raise the level of consciousness in the world, in the area around me, and hopefully thereby by raising it in the world.
So I've heard you say that, and you talked some about that on our politics and ethics episode, and I've heard you say it in other things too. But understanding this makes more sense on that sacred work that you do.
Yeah. So I feel very strongly that one of my that I'm here to help us move through some of these things, and the more people that are committed to this work, exponentially the faster it happens, until eventually we'll all be enlightened.
I love that idea.
Yeah, me too.
And I love the idea of like looking at this consciousness graphic and seeing that movement. My movement tends to not be linear, but like bounce around. Yeah. Hopefully on a general trajectory of upward.
Yes. So hopefully either I'll put a link to this, or I'll put the graphic itself in our show notes so other people can see it as well.
Well, thank you for walking me through this. Things make a lot more sense now.
When I throw this stuff out and you look at me like, Yay! I'm so glad. Yeah, I live in this world, and it's nice to I didn't realize until I was writing this down and that I don't really, there's only really one person I talk about this stuff with. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk to another person.
Well, now you're talking to two, and then soon it will be exponentially more than that as our listeners get to the treat of listening to this.
Yes.
So thank you for coming on this journey with us as we delve into these planes of existence.
Dun.
Yes.
Okay, you hear my dog panting in the background. He's waking up. Anyway, so the poem that we're going to read is by Edward Abbey. And he was an American author, essayist, and environmental activist who was noted for his advocacy of environmental issues and criticism of public land policies. Very well known. I actually, I didn't realize I'd read some of his stuff. I just didn't remember his name. Anyway, but good writer. So there we go. And so we're going to read a poem of his that's in my book, Earth Prayers.
How strange and wonderful is our home, our earth, with its swirling, vaporous atmosphere.
Its flowing and frozen, climbing creatures. The croaking things with wings that hang on rocks.
And soar through fog, the furry grass, the scaly seas, how utterly rich and wild.
Yet some among us have the nerve, the insolence, the brass, the gall to whine
about the limitations of our earthbound fate and yearn for some more perfect world beyond the sky.
We are none of us good enough for the world we have.
Thank you for joining us today in the world that we have together here at Witchy Wit. Thank you for journeying with us through these planes of existence. We hope you'll join us over on Patreon for some special content that we have there. And until then, we hope you all have a great day and keep it witchy. We hope you have enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
It would be great if you would help make Witchy Wit possible and get access to exclusive content by donating on Patreon.
We'd love it if you join our witchy community and enjoy shareable content on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Would you do us a big favor and support us by rating and reviewing us wherever you get your podcasts? It's free and helps witchy folks find us.
Feel free to email us at witchywitpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from our community. Reach out and let us know what's brewing in your cauldron.
New episodes are released every second and fourth Friday. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform so our episodes go right to your playlist. You can listen as you ride your broom.
Stay witchy, y'all!